try to shut people up so that they can make some money. That's just bad business. That's bad business. It's time to, if I was an investor in this business, I'd pull all my money from it. I wouldn't invest in a business that's doing this type of stuff. And I feel sorry for the workers that work there. They deserve a better employer. I feel sorry for the people of Uniontown that have to live around this dump. And if I was the investors of this landfill, I'd go ahead and take all my money out. And if I worked for y'all, I'd make a strong note to revoke the permit and get it out of here.
All right.
Yay!
Amen. Amen.
All right. Next week, Ellis Long.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
My name is Ellis Long. I'm a member of Uniontown Cares, a nonprofit volunteer service organization in Uniontown, Alabama, and a former member of both Concerned Citizens of Perry County and Black Hill Citizens Fighting for Health and Justice. Arrowhead Landfill was originally permitted as a site designed as a municipal solid waste disposal facility, but the landfill owners and ADEM have turned it into a site that receives hazardous waste accepted under the category of special waste as approved by ADEM. In 2003, in defiance of overwhelming opposition from Perry County citizens, the Perry County Commission voted to host a huge landfill to be constructed just 1.5 miles southeast of Uniontown. When the 1,116-acre landfill was planned, it was designed to be the largest municipal solid waste disposal facility in the state of Alabama, permitted to accept up to 7,500 tons of waste per day, with the waste stream generated in 16 states from Florida to New York. ADEM approved the permit for the landfill, the original one, in spite of 1, substantial evidence that the proposed site was unsuitable, 2, the landfill developer's admission in court that he had committed fraud and misrepresentations in the permit application, and 3, ADEM's knowledge that the environmental impact would fall on an impoverished, predominantly African-American rural community. Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 prohibits discrimination based on race, color, or national origin in programs or activities which receive federal financial assistance. ADEM receives federal financial assistance from EPA. Renewing this permit would have disproportionately high adverse human health and environmental effects on a population that is both minority and low income, in violation of the Presidential Executive Order 12898, signed by President Clinton in 1994. The executive order directs federal agencies, including EPA, to address these effects to the greatest extent practicable and permitted by law, and to develop a strategy for implementing environmental justice with the goal of achieving environmental protection for all communities. All communities include Uniontown. EPA defines environmental justice as the fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people, regardless of race, color, national origin, or income, with respect to the development, implementation, and enforcement of environmental laws, regulations, and policies. EPA has this goal for all communities and persons across the nation. According to EPA, this goal will be achieved when everyone, not just some people, but everyone, enjoys, first, the same degree of protection from environmental and health hazards, and secondly, equal access to the decision-making process to have a healthy environment in which to live, learn, and work. Those are EPA's words. Uniontown has been designated by EPA as an environmental justice area. Federal EJ policy is intended to protect low-income and minority communities from bearing a disproportionate amount of environmental risks. Throughout the original landfill application process and the first renewal process, which happened in 2011, it was apparent that no one at ADEM was in charge of conducting an environmental justice review, and no one at ADEM advocated including such a review in the process. Today, there is still no independent division at ADEM whose primary focus is environmental justice. Instead of pushing so hard to issue the permit for Arrowhead landfill, ADEM should have adhered to EPA's EJ policy and taken steps to avoid placing such an inordinately high burden of risk on the population of Uniontown. As a consequence of ADEM's indifference to EJ policy, Uniontown residents are forced to live with this mega landfill, which has destroyed the peaceful and healthful rural environment we once enjoyed. In 2006, ADEM modified Arrowhead landfill's permit to authorize increased levels of disposal of up to 15,000 tons of waste per day to be generated from 33 states. As a result, Uniontown has become the dumping ground for 2/3 of the U.S. This is another violation of EPA's environmental justice policy as it pertains to the residents of Uniontown, and it's shameful. The bottom line is that ADEM should never have issued a permit for Arrowhead landfill in the first place, as it is a violation of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Presidential Executive Order of 1994, as well as EPA's environmental justice policy. We want ADEM to do the right thing for Uniontown citizens and our environment. First, deny the application for permit renewal. Second, remove the coal ash and other toxic waste from the landfill and relocate it to a facility designed to accept hazardous waste. Third, close the landfill. And fourth, compensate for the environmental injustice done to the city of Uniontown by giving Uniontown the $4 million that ADEM profited from its decision to permit the Kingston coal ash to be disposed of in the Arrowhead landfill. Thank you.
Mary Schaefer.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Yeah. My name is Mary Schaefer, and I'm a resident of Uniontown, a member of Uniontown Cares, and a former member of the Concerned Citizens of Perry County, who originally fought the establishment of the landfill here, and also of the Black Belt Citizens Fighting for Health and Justice, which has been fighting the landfill here. I have a number of issues with the proposed renewal of the permit that has been requested by Green Group Holdings LLC and Howling Coyote LLC, who are the owners of the Arrowhead landfill. First and foremost, we have reason to believe that there is a major problem with Waste Cell 1, which would explain why Green Group Holdings is requesting a major modification of the permit in order to raise the bottom elevation of cells 2 and 3 10 feet. That is, instead of digging down 20 feet into the earth, they would only dig down 10 feet. The original design plan was for an excavation depth of 20 feet. But there is a strong likelihood that when the Uniontown area has had significant rainfalls, the water table below ground has become so saturated that flooding has occurred. Some of you may remember that we objected so strongly to the placement of the landfill on this particular site because it had wetlands and waterways. It had both perennial streams, intermittent streams, and it had wetlands. And there were marks on some of the trees that the water at some times had been up maybe 5 or 6 feet onto the tree trunks. So there was a lot of evidence that water was going to be a problem there. The landfill developers and our county commissioners bragged a lot about Selma chalk. They acted like Selma chalk was marble or granite. Selma chalk has another name, rotten limestone. That tells you something right there, that is a term that is well known to be another name for Selma chalk. limestone is capable of being dissolved by surface water or groundwater. Limestone is a carbonate rock that is susceptible to dissolution of its structure, whether it is above ground and being battered by rain, or below ground, either in saturated places or where it is even lower, and maybe a lower aquifer may be passing underneath it. So it's being not chipped away, but worn away over time. The water table is really a level below ground, which fluctuates. It goes up and down depending on the amount of rainfall. When this landfill was first investigated in 1999, it's my understanding that we had going on for us here a drought that had been going on for about 5 years. And that happens to be the year that I moved to Uniontown from Texas, so I kind of remember that date. We had such a drought that I don't know where the water table was. I don't know how deep it was. But just about 2 weeks ago, we had a very tall iron rod. I actually meant to bring it with me. That had been, I guess the iron rod was about this tall. And it had been pounded into the ground, so only this much of it was above ground. And to try to work that iron rod out of the ground took some hours and a sledgehammer and other things, muscle. But when they got it out, it looked like the water from the top, there was a water line here, but it wasn't that it had been there always. It was more or less a temporary water line. And then down about another 1.5 feet, there was more of a permanent water line. So just like if you go out in your yard and you dig up a big hole to plant a tree and it's been raining a lot, when you walk away, you're going to get some water seeping into that hole. So we are very concerned that the water table underneath the landfill is impacting the, I'm sorry, I can't think of the right word, the integrity of the landfill cell. And they're wanting to move the landfill cells in the future up 10 feet, but I'm not sure that up 10 feet is going to do it. Even if you dig a grave, which is 6 feet, right?
Less.
Does anybody know about getting water in a place that's been dug for a grave? It happens. I want to mention a few other points to you. I just feel like, I know that there were some things that were in the original landfill permit that were fraud. I'll bring one to your attention just as an example, but I think that there are probably others. The landfill folks, the PCA associates, included in the original permit a page from the Army Corps of Engineers from the Mobile office. And this one-page letter seemed to say, these are the characteristics of the area that you're talking about where you're going to put the landfill. And the letter, the last sentence on the page ended and it had a period, but there was no indication of who wrote the letter or why, what was their determination. Was it actually a letter of concurrence? That it was good and fine to put the landfill there? Well, it just seems strange. So I called the Army Corps of Engineers and I talked to the man who wrote the letter. And he said, well, no, if you read page 2 of this letter, you will see that I go into a description of what they will need to do in order to get a permit. They will have to get what's called a Section 404 permit, because this parcel of land does have 16 wetlands and 25 waterways, and they can't just plop the landfill there. They've got to do a much greater study, and it's going to involve several other federal agencies doing an impact study. So I said, well, that is really strange. So I called our attorney over in Montgomery, Susan Copeland, and I said, Susan, I'm understanding that there is a second page of this letter, and it's really not a letter of concurrence. It's a letter telling them they have to have a Section 404 permit. And the first words out of her mouth were, well, that is an absolute fraud. That is an absolute fraud. She said, I'm going to send a messenger down there to get that page. And she did. However, many of you know how politics go in Alabama. It wasn't too long before that the gentleman who wrote that letter had been more or less shifted away from that responsibility, and one of the supervisors wrote another letter and said, oh, because they've designed this landfill so that the cells are going to be sitting in an area and not actually on top of a wetland or on top of a stream, then we're going to go ahead and say that it's okay. They don't need to have a different permit. Well, that really was just a political move. That's not really the way that should happen, because it is really against federal law to place a landfill in an area that has wetlands and waterways like that. And so, knowing that experience, I have several things that I just want to mention briefly. The limestone or Selma chalk that's in that area is very vulnerable to the effect of a lot of water, whether the water is in the ground or above